Roxane, are you here?
I'm here.
Oh, I saw all these beautiful places. Okay, everybody just kind of give some love to Roxane. Glad to see you, Roxane. Glad to see your beautiful face.
Glad to see you too, Carla.
Oh my gosh. I can't wait till this is live again because we have to have you come back to talk to writers, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. I will come back anytime.
Okay, we're gonna keep that connection because we really want you to come back in person with us. But I'm not going to talk long. Everyone in this room knows who you are. They're all writers. They're all interested. So we're going to start our questions with Teresa Douglas first and then JM second. And I'm going to try to keep my hands straight. But Roxane, you start first, though. You kind of like say something to these writers who are very hungry for information.
Oh, I'm happy to just answer any questions you might have about the writing life. And I can answer questions about writing process. I'm also willing to answer questions about publishing. Sorry, my assistant is texting me and it's coming through on my laptop and I'm doing this on my laptop. So that's what it is. But she's great. So
okay,
say
no
hi
worries.
to her virtually.
All right, Teresa, can you unmute yourself and ask, please? Where is she? Teresa Douglas? Oh, right there. Can you unmute? Oh, hurry, guys, because we don't have long.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that.
Ask away, no worries.
So I'm going to be the nerd and ask about your process. I'm sure it fluctuates for different things, but generally speaking, when you're starting writing an essay, how do you go about doing that? Do you start with what you want to write? Are you generative? How do you do that?
It depends, but I'm mostly generative. So I'm thinking about writing an essay tonight about what everyone's writing terrible essays about right now, which is Bad Art Friend. And so I've been mulling it over since yesterday when I read the 10,000 word article in the New York Times. And I've been trying to think sort of like, what is the obvious argument? And so that's not going to work. So what is the unexpected perspective I could take on this? And so I mulled it over for about 12 hours. And today I've sort of been getting closer and closer to what I think I want to say about it and how I really want to sort of pull apart the many, many issues, and especially I think the racial dynamics and the parasocial dynamics of the issue. And so I know where I want to start, and I want to start with how when I'm trying to explain something that happens on the internet or that I learned from the internet, I'll say my friend went to Belize or whatever. And it's like someone I've never met, but it feels like they're my friend because I follow them and I'm interested in their lives. And so I think we inherently fall into this idea that we're friends with everyone with whom we have encounters, whether it's passive or active on the internet. And so that's my starting point. And I know that I want my ending point to be sort of thinking about scale and proportion when it comes to harm and adjudicating harm. And so now the question for me as I write the essay is, how do I get from pretend friends, and the essay is called Imaginary Friends, I know the title already. How do I get from that point to thinking about perspective and scale when it comes to harm? And so then I just try to write my way, getting closer and closer to where I want to end. And it differs for every essay, but that's how I'm working on this current essay.
Okay, JM, you're next. Come on, guys.
Can you hear me? Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can,
JM.
Oh dear. Okay, I'm sorry. This is the first time I've ever used Zoom, so I have no idea what I'm doing.
No worries.
And I'm not a writer, and I just wanted to listen to this with Roxane Gay. So I'm just going to listen because I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
You're doing great.
Well, I figured out the microphone, but I don't know how to write anything. So I don't want to take up a lot of your time.
Okay.
I'll just be back here listening.
No worries, no worries. We're all trying to figure this out.
You're doing this just right.
Yes,
Thank you.
Who's next? Who's next? Come on, guys. Don't be shy.
Mickey, why don't we go with you, Mickey?
Mickey Morrissey. Come on, Mickey.
Okay, so I wanted to ask Roxane, so how do you feel about writing to whatever is trending at the time, or write what's in your heart? Because I tend to write about what's in my heart, what I want to write about, and don't really care about what's trending and what's selling. So how you feel about that?
It just depends. I think that I think it's important for nonfiction writers to write to what's happening more than, I wouldn't say trending, which I think is more of a marketing term. But, I think that a lot of us turn to public figures and public intellectuals to contextualize the things that are happening and to help us figure out where we stand on a given issue. And so there is a need for that kind of writing. But I'm at a point in my career where I don't have to respond to everything. And I think that a lot of younger writers do have to respond to everything and have something to say about every single major cultural event. And so I'm grateful that I'm in a place where I can only I can choose to write about what I want to write about. And sometimes it's things that are happening in the news, and sometimes it's things that are more evergreen and more passion projects and things that I care about that have nothing to do with the news cycle. And so I think that there is space in literary discourse for both. And I just wish that more people got to choose instead of being forced to write one or the other.
Jessica, you're up next.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Thank you so much for being here and giving us your time. I appreciate it. I hope this question is relevant for more people than just me. So I've been thinking that even just like 10 years ago, we could post on Tumblr or send a tweet and have a pretty far reach. And trying to find community online now can feel overwhelming, or at least it does for me. It feels like the internet is super oversaturated. So I'm curious to know, if you were just starting out now as a writer, without a platform or without a community, where would you start?
I would start where I started, which is on Twitter. And well, actually, no, I'll take it even a step back. I would start where I started, which was on the page. I think that a lot of writers are looking for community, but you have to build something for the community to come to, and that is your writing. And that doesn't mean that just because you write something, you're naturally going to find community and you're going to find an audience. However, you can't do it without it. There has to be a there. And so for me, it started with my writing. And then about 15 years ago, I joined Twitter, maybe less, but it's been a while. And I had maybe 10 followers, then I had 40, then I had 200. And I was not looking for a following, but then it started to build as my writing got further and further out into the world. And they didn't come to see what I had to say on Twitter. They came to see what I had to say on Twitter because they read something I published first at HTML Giant or the Pank blog or Salon, and then The Guardian, and so on and so forth. And so I just literally built my career going from one level to the next, to the next, to the next for many, many years. And it took quite a long time. And so that's the best way to build community, is to develop a readership. And there are no easy answers. And it can seem very overwhelming because a lot of agents will tell you incorrectly, in my opinion, that you need to have X number of Twitter followers for a publisher to take your proposal seriously. And so what that person is telling you is that they are not the right advocate for your work. If that's what you think, then that's not someone you want to work with. Are they right? In a sense, but not really. I mean, I didn't publish my first books that long ago. The publishing world has not changed that much. I had like 2,000 Twitter followers back then. It was not a factor whatsoever. So I think that so many young writers stress themselves out in this quest to find an audience and to go viral. And the thing about viruses is that they pretty much flame out as quickly as they rise. And so do you really want to be a virus, or do you want to be a cure? And so I think also reframing what you want your work to do in the world is helpful to relieve some of that internal pressure and external pressure for that matter.
Absolutely. Thank you, Roxane, for that. Next, we have Emma and then Nora Burns.
Hi there. Thank you so much for organizing this, and Roxane Gay for being here. I literally had the exact same question as Jessica. So I appreciate you talking about starting with the writing. I guess I could follow up with sort of a slant on it. I know Twitter's been kind of up and down for you, maybe. Is that fair to say? So could you talk a little bit about like what you think it's good for, what it's not for, how you kind of protect yourself and make it useful to you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, Twitter is not useful to me in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
It used to be, and it was until I would say 2 years ago. I love Twitter. I wish that I could have an experience on Twitter that I used to have, which is I could talk about writing and share things that I read that I loved and interact with people I admired and also promote my own work. And it's become so toxic and so profoundly unpleasant. And I mean, it's just such a rotten place. People have truly, for everyone, people have just fucking lost their minds on Twitter. Like nothing, there's no room to breathe. If you say my toe hurts, someone will say at least you have a toe. It's like, this is literally happening every single day.
Right.
And so I just don't find it pleasant to spend time there. It does not help me as a person. And so what's great about Twitter is this sense that you're at a cocktail party, but in your pajamas. And you can, when it's at its very best, interact with a lot of really interesting people. It is a great way to share writing that you love, whether it's your own or someone else's. What's not so great about Twitter is that there's no room for people to be human. There's no room for flaws. There's no room for mistakes. And it's really stressful the more visible you get, thinking, I really just can't say anything about anything because someone's going to get upset. And of course, like, stop caring, but that's easier said than done. And I have found that when you step away from Twitter, all of the conflagrations that are happening there, people who are not online in that way are like, what are you talking about? And so it's not even an accurate reflection of reality. And I think it's incredibly important to remember that social media is becoming so toxic that it distorts our priorities. And so I'm just trying to find that fine balance between enjoying Twitter and sharing things, but while also having boundaries and not getting upset and like not spending enough time on Twitter that I get upset by like Jane 9437 and whatever the hell she has to say to me.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we have Nora.
Talking a little bit about Roxane Gay book.
What?
Roxane Gay book.
Yes. So I started an imprint at Grove Atlantic, which publishes my adult fiction. And I'm really excited about it. I'm going to be publishing 3 books or so a year. And I accept submissions from both agented and unagented writers, even though I'm closed until next year for submissions from unagented writers, because I think I have found enough books to choose from now. And it's just really an exciting opportunity to be able to publish books that I want to see in the world and to do so with resources. And Grove Atlantic is an incredible partner. They are they're a mid-sized independent press. And so, we're not able to make these huge 7-figure advances that you're going to see at HarperCollins and so on. But what you are going to have is a book that's going to earn out and that is going to sustain you forever and ever and ever. And that's, I think, one of the greatest gifts that we can give writers. Now, if you can get the 7-figure advance up front, go ahead. But just know it's nearly impossible to earn that out. And so I love being able to work with writers and hopefully develop a long-term relationship with some really great writers and walk them through the publication process and support their books out in the world.
Okay, Nora, you're next. Thank you for that, Roxane.
Thank you for your time, Roxane. My question is for the newer or the less confident writers. For those of us who have stories and have, the idea and are maybe just starting to put pen to paper or don't have the confidence to push stuff out, what advice would you give? How did you kind of get yourself psyched up and ready to do it?
I didn't. I just did it. I think a lot of times people expect that there's a threshold of courage that they will reach, and then everything will come to them and it will be fine. I think that you block your blessings and you get in your own way when you do that. And so I am terrified generally when I write the things that mean the most to me, but I just sit down and do it anyway. And I tell myself no one's going to read it. And for most of us early in our careers, that's the truth. And so it's fine. It's safe. Put whatever you want to put out there. But even if you don't send it out into the world, what's the harm in writing it? So I really like to tell people who are hesitant or nervous, just because you write it does not mean you have to share it with anyone or that you have to publish it. And so start. The number one thing and the number one answer to almost every question I can be asked as a writer is that you actually just have to write. And so you have to get out of your own way and you have to uncomplicate it and just sit and do the work. It's not glamorous and it's not necessarily that exciting, but that's how it works. You have to just write and give yourself permission and know that you have every right to put your perspective into the world. You don't have to explain, you don't have to apologize, you have the right. And when you allow yourself to believe that, you don't need confidence as much as you just need to accept that you have the right to give yourself permission.
Okay, thank you. That's a wonderful answer. That's a wonderful answer. So we have next Natasha, Beverly, and Lisa, and then Nilsa.
Hi. Sorry, my voice is trying to go. I am a brand new academic and I am a fiction writer. So I'm trying to find a balance between making sure I fulfill the obligations to university and also the desires, like that I'm heading up the Black Student Union. I'm trying to recreate that. So things that I want to do for the university as well as the obligations. So any advice at all between kind of finding a balance between what is expected of you and making sure you ensure or protect your writing time?
You have to protect your writing time. You have to prioritize your writing as much as they want to prioritize all of your time for their ends. The institution is never going to love you. So no matter how many committees you head and how many search committees you sit on and how many university committees you serve on, they are not going to love you. They are not going to see you as more than they are going to see you. And so it's super, super important to understand that so that you recognize that you have to prioritize your time. Universities will try to burn you out as a junior faculty member, no matter what background you come from. But when you are a woman, when you are a person of color, when you are queer or any combination, people with disabilities, people who are non-binary, any form of difference, they are going to try and monopolize your energy and your time. They are vampires. And so you need to surround yourself with garlic and just a steak and keep them away from you. And so you need to block out on your calendar Wednesday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. writing time. And you have whatever works with your life. And you have to treat that time as sacred. You have to make that appointment with yourself and you have to keep that appointment with yourself, because if you're not going to respect your own calendar, nobody else will. And so that's the key thing that you have to do. It has to be as important as going to class and going to committee meetings, because when you want to go up for tenure, they're not going to care that all you did was service work. They're going to say, where's the book? And so to that end, to answer that question, you have to prioritize you and your research and your writing, because they're only going to prioritize it when it serves their own interests.
Thank you for that, Roxanne. And that can go for anybody who has a crazy job or a crazy life. I'm right
Amen.
there with you. I'm listening because it's like, I don't do it enough. Okay, so next we have Beverly and Lisa, Nilsa and Nisi. And we're running towards the end, guys. So come on, get those questions out, please.
They're fine.
Okay,
Good.
okay. I had to run, get my my batteries going down. So I'm out of breath, but I have a question about, so I've submitted to my the chair of my department to actually teach a nonfiction class next semester on trauma. And I've
Yes.
read I've attended your master class, but I'll be teaching undergrads. So I was wondering, any suggestions on, I'm building the curriculum now.
Any suggestions on how to teach writing trauma?
On trauma, yeah, because I read yours and books, any books for undergraduates.
Oh, for undergraduates. Yes. My dog is barking. What do I teach? You know, it shifts and evolves, but there are some really great resources out there on writing trauma. One of the key pieces I love to teach is a very short article that was in the New York Times called, I think it was called How to Write Trauma, and it's by Saeed Safirizadeh. And he is a Persian writer and very talented.
How do you pronounce that? I'm not spell it.
Oh God, I couldn't tell you. But his first name is S-A-I-D, and the I has the 2 dots over it. And the last name I think is S-A-F-I-R-A-Z-A-D-E-H or S-A-Y-R. But that'll get you close enough. Oh my God, I was almost right. Yes. Ow. Well, you look at that. Names are important. So that's a really good starting point and a very accessible text, and a very interesting text because it's not sort of 1 + 1 is 2 in terms of thinking about how to write about trauma. And in terms of books, I love Kiese Lehman's Heavy, which I think is a beautiful, beautiful example of how to write about trauma and how to do so well. And
we're trying to
also,
bring him in. Yes.
Good. Heartberries. Oh, he's great. You're going to have the most incredible event with Kiese. He's just incredible. Heartberries by Therese Maillot, TheresemaiLhot. And then The Chronology of Water by Lydia Yuknavitch, and that's Lidiayuknavitch. Those are just some books to get you started. They're all memoirs and they all approach writing about trauma in different ways. And then this one, some people love, some people don't, but it's by the white girl. She's a white woman, I should say. She's a great writer. I like her. Leslie Jameson.
Yes.
It's her first essay collection. I read it all the time and I'm completely blanking on the title, but Leslie Jameson's first essay collection is The Empathy Exams.
Yes.
I think is a really elegant book and explores trauma in some unexpected ways as well. And so really what you want to do through your own reading is find books that embody the principles that you would like to teach your undergraduates about writing trauma, and find books, essays, whatever, that approach it in ways that are not expected. I just think that in ways that are uncomfortable, because I think trauma is uncomfortable. And so it's best to find readings that show, how do we get there as writers? How do we engender that response from our readers?
Absolutely. And just so you know too, sometimes violence is part of trauma. In our upcoming City Lit Studio, which is October 20th, the novelist Sherry Jones will be writing about writing violence, when it's better not to, and how it can lend excitement to a narrative. But what are the alternatives to graphic depictions of gore? When should we use those alternatives and why? In this session, Sherry will share tips on writing violence responsibly and why some thoughts might be better left unsaid, just to give you an idea of what's coming up.
That's
Thank you for
exciting.
that, Roxanne. Yes.
That's going to be a great workshop. I think about writing violence all the time. It is definitely of a piece in terms of writing about trauma. And I think it's a really interesting thing. Like, how do you know when to be explicit, when to not be, when to be implicit, when to write into violence, when to write around it. So I think it's going to be great. I'm excited to know that it's happening. I wish I could go.
Oh, we're gonna have you back, Roxane. But next we have, I do believe it's Lisa, Nilsa, then Nisi.
Sure. Hi, Roxanne, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm in the middle of my thesis right now, and I'm writing about the OGs, our literary elders, and the IGs, meaning the new Instagram generation, the new writers, of which I consider you an IG. But I'm wondering, who do you consider an OG, and how have they possibly had an impact on you as a writer?
I mean, it's obvious, but Toni Morrison, I think is incredible. And she guides me in so many things. She was just so intelligent and so thorough in her thinking, both in her fiction and her nonfiction. And I also was incredibly influenced by Terry McMillan, who is an incredible mentor to a great many writers, and she does not get nearly enough credit for it. She has been extraordinarily generous to me over the course of my career, and I have always looked up to her even before I knew her. She just writes for Black women, and that's it. And I take that as a guide. She doesn't apologize. She's like, this is who I write for. I don't care if y'all read it or not. I care if Black women read it. And I just love that. And I love how just engaging and compelling her work can be at its best. And so I would say those two women have been incredible OG guides.
And did you realize too, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Terry McMillan was the reason why the publishing industry looked at who buys books. Terry McMillan was the person who taught them when Waiting to Exhale, when the publisher said, okay, we're going to market your book. She said, oh no, you don't know how to market my book. I'm going to tell you how to market my book. And she changed the entire industry's way of looking at Black women who buy hardcover books, who are adamant about not only buying those books, but sending them off word of mouth. They just pass them off one to the other. And that has always
absolutely. You know, everything that we know about Black women as readers, not everything, but almost everything we know about Black women as readers can be traced to Terry McMillan.
Right.
Because not because Black women didn't read before her, but she sold so many books that publishing had to take a step back and say, wait a minute, who? What? And that's when people started to understand that Black women read. And not only do they read, they are loyal readers. If they like you, they will read you for your first book to your 50th book. And like you pointed out, Carla, they will share your book with their friends. If they read your first book in their book club, they're going to read your second book and your third. There's this incredible nationwide book club. I think they even have a couple international outposts called Go On Girl, that is primarily, if not exclusively, Black women. And I think it's one of the largest book clubs in the world. And it's thousands and thousands of members. I think there are chapters in every state. They're incredible. And they have been some of my most passionate and loyal and engaged readers over the years. And that makes me very happy.
We're so excited too, because one of the panels I want to bring back to our City Lit Festival is a panel on girlhood, Black girlhood. Because we don't read enough about it. We don't talk enough about it. There's so much joy in being a young Black girl. So yes.
Good.
Okay, we have Nilsa next, and then Nisi.
Thank you, Roxane, for doing this. It's amazing. I have a question. How do you find a balance? I actually have two, but they go together. How do you find a balance between sharing or showing your vulnerability on the page and oversharing? And then at the same time, once you're ready to publish, what are some things that you do and that we can do as writers to protect our story from being marketed in a way that is not authentic to us?
In truth, there's very little you can do to protect your story in terms of how it's going to be marketed, especially if you're a debut writer. It's really about power, I'm certainly, I think, finally in a position where I can have some say in terms of how my work is marketed, but it just takes time and power. And so what you have to do is make sure that you are prepared to handle the nonsense that will happen around your book that you can't control, which is not to say that you have to be passive and say nothing. It's that you have to understand that once you write the book and share it with the world, you no longer have any control. Things are going to happen. People are going to interpret your work in ways you don't like. They're going to interview you in ways you don't like. And it doesn't mean you do nothing in the face of it. It just means you have to be ready for it to happen. And so to answer your first question, that's the metric I use in terms of what I put into my work. What can I handle people mucking around in? And what can I not handle people mucking around in? And so I ask myself that for every personal disclosure I might feel compelled to make in a work. And then the other metric I use is this going to harm my relationships with the people who matter most in my life? And does this compromise someone else's privacy in a way that they would find intolerable? I don't go around asking the people in my life for permission to write about them, but frankly, I don't need to, because there's nothing I've ever put out in the world about anyone that would be untrue or that would make them feel misrepresented. At least not since I grew up. I did once many years ago when I was a child, write a short story for Best Lesbian Erotica, like 1999, where I wrote about a threesome that was basically a story about my ex cheating on me. And when she read the story, she was like, that's not exactly how it happened. And you kind of didn't talk about like your role in things. And she was right. And from that point forward, I decided that I was only going to be honest when I wrote about other people. Now, if you've harmed me, I don't care. So for example, the men who raped me, you know, you shouldn't have raped me if you didn't want me to talk about you. And so that's also something that I prioritize, but it's easy for me to do that because it's been 30 some years. And so I'm not in any immediate danger. There are people who are writing about things that are much more immediate. And so you also have to think about personal safety, physically and emotionally, and then make decisions from there.
I have to say that Nilsa is an incredible writer, and I look forward to the day when her books gets out there, and it's just gonna blow everybody away. I just had to.
Oh, I can't wait.
All right. Now, Roxane, are you comfortable taking a few more questions? I know we're beyond our time.
That's fine.
Okay, okay, because we really want to honor the idea that you've been with us all evening. Okay, Nisi, please, and then Crystal. And is Juliet still on the line? Okay, so Nisi, Crystal, then Juliet.
Hi, Roxane. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Hi. So again, I want to thank you for this opportunity and you blessing us with with your grace and your tips and just your motivation. But my question is also in reference to trauma, and I believe that I have a book inside of me, one or two actually. So I wanted to know. I wanted to know specifically about how to handle what you just brought up. I'm going to piggyback on how to handle it when it does involve someone who has wronged you and has hurt you. How do you establish those boundaries clearly when these people are, present in your life still? I don't want to write about someone that I would hurt.
Yeah.
Just because and it still hurts. I don't have to, I'm not the type of person where I have to do that to make it right with them. So that's one question. Also wanted the link or the website to submit writings to you, because as a Black woman, I would rather not have a large one-time payday. We're talking about building legacy.
Yeah.
Continuing on something for our families and for those that come after me.
Yes.
So to establish that with someone like yourself, I would be so grateful.
For sure. So I'm close to submissions until June 15th, 2022, but in June 2022, you can go to gay.submittable.com and there's no fees or anything like that. And there are instructions and guidelines and tips for submitting to Roxane Gay books, because, like, help yourself. Like, so don't submit YA, don't submit poetry, don't submit middle grade books, and people still do it. And I'm like, I've told you up front, I'm not publishing those things. But the link is in the chat right now, and I look forward to reading your work. And in terms of writing about someone who has harmed you, who is still in your life, I mean, the challenge is, like, are you ready? And I would say 6 times out of 10, people are not ready, and you need some therapy. You need some therapy so that you know that you can handle whatever comes next. And I know that therapy is not accessible to everyone, so I don't say that flippantly, and I don't say that with the assumption that everyone has unfettered and affordable access to mental health care. That said, you also just have to stay true to your experience. You can't control how someone else understands your interactions or how they're going to feel about what you write. And so you have to recognize that your truth is valid no matter how anyone else perceives it or responds to it. And you also have to recognize that you're not responsible for anyone else's feelings. I don't mean that you can be cavalier and just throw harm into the world, but especially when you're writing about someone who harmed you, how they respond and feel about it, like, that's their business. And how you share what happened to you and why that's relevant to a reader is your business. And so trying to remember that distinction can be incredibly helpful in giving you the courage and the strength to write your truth in the ways that will honor that truth.
Thank you. I certainly believe that, honestly, in my heart. And I don't try to carry other people's baggage, and that's why I released it. But the pain is still there.
Of course.
And of still their feelings, but the pain is still there. So
sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being.
That's important for everyone to remember, is that, like, a lot of this is just messy, and there is no, like, finite answer we can give you. Like, you're going to do this thing and it's going to kind of be horrible, but you're going to do it anyway. And you just try to make it the least horrible as possible. You're going to do the least, like doctors do no harm. And I think that writers should also follow that. Like, it's a really good way to live, is to do no harm, or to do the least harm possible. And so if that's a good guiding principle for your work, you will be well served.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So we have Crystal, and then Juliet, you would have the last question, and Roxane, you can just say some final words, and then we'll be done. But Crystal, you're next, and then Juliet.
Cool. Hi again. I guess my question is, I'm working on a culinary memoir, and I find that I've been having issues with the work that I have been submitting on my deadlines as far as the language that I'm using. It seems that I'm using a lot of, like, lowercase i's for my pronouns, and I'm using a lot of, I guess, just a lot of language that people in food, as far as, like, a Black food writer, I'm not working in hospitality. I'm not, like, a food blogger per se. It seems as though I'm presenting something that's kind of foreign in this space, as far as, like, the type of language that people are expecting. I'm saying y'all a lot. I'm saying ain't a lot. I'm saying all of those types of things. And it's just like, I'm getting a lot of pushback on that and trying to, like, change and shape my language. And my writing in particular for me is really, like, inspired by, like, Berta Mae Smart Grosvenor and Roxane Gay, and people who are celebrated in the food space now, but it's because they're dead. That's just how they treat Black women in food. They don't care about you until you're dead, and then they can kind of reshape your story. So I guess my question is, how do I stand by my language in writing? Because I know that my voice is worthy of being heard, and I know that the way that I'm writing is not something new. This is how people talk in Baltimore. This is how people talk in any other major Black city. And I think it's important to, like, hold that, not just for me, but for other people who are writing as well when they write?
Well, when you're saying you're getting pushback from whom?
Literary agents, also meetings with editors from publishing houses, with what I have presented as a, as a sample or a proposal. They'll be like, this is great. There are a few things we would like to change, specifically the ink.
Then they're not the right
eyes.
people for you.
Right.
I mean,
no, right,
it's really
yeah.
that simple. Like, that's not your team. And so what you have to do, which is hard, is to tell yourself, those are not my people. And you have to stay the course and stay true to yourself. That said, you also have to ask yourself, is there any merit to what they're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Is there something I can do to stay true to myself, but address these concerns? I find that when 2 or 3 people tell you something, you can dismiss it. But when 20 people tell you the same thing, then maybe it's time to revisit the work and ask yourself. But when it comes to vernacular and cultural specificity and choices like lowercase I mean, Bell Hooks gave people fits for decades because she lowercases the B and the H. People get so viscerally upset because she dares to challenge grammatical norms. And so you have to dare to challenge grammatical norms, because whose norms? They're not our norms. It's their norms. And you have to wait until you find the right editor who will understand what you're trying to do and will work with you on your own, like on those sort of like, they'll meet you where you're at instead of trying to bring you over to where they're at. Yeah. And that's easier said than done. But one editor you want to sort of try it, I don't know if you've reached out to her yet, is Jamia Wilson at Penguin Random House.
Somebody sent me her information and I was like, okay, but okay.
Yeah, Jamia is buying some incredible books right now, and some like blackety black books. And so if she tells you to change it, then then maybe it's time to like sit with it and like consider what she's saying. But there are like 3 Black editors. It's so hard. But you also want to Tracy, what's her name? Tracy at Amistad, who runs Amistad.
Okay. Yeah.
So like you have to go where people will know who you are. And then Chris Jackson at One World. And now none of these people accept unagented submissions, but Jamia, you might be able to get word to one way or another. Jamia, I think we'll probably see about you. But with the other 2, and you want an agent, but there are Black agents. There are like 4 or 5. And so the Black agent I'm thinking of, I'm so bad at names.
Are you thinking of Jack? Well, I don't even think they do. Oh, Jack Jones. Are you thinking of?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. No, I'm gonna take that. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Leave that there, and you can slide into my DMs for the rest. Her name is Tanya McKinnon, I think.
Oh, okay.
And
is she independent?
She's independent. She owns her own. McKinnon. She owns McKinnon McIntyre. And she's incredible. I interviewed her on my podcast, and she's blackety black. And just so down. And she is a developmental agent. She's going to work with you, get your project where it needs to be to submit. And this goes for everyone looking for an agent.
I hope you guys are taking notes.
But she's great. So I would
start. It was Jamil. What's her last name?
Jamia Wilson.
Now, respecting time, let's go to Juliet, and then we're going to close it out. Roxane's going to say a few words, and then we're going to say so long.
Thanks, Roxane.
You're welcome.
Okay, Juliet.
Thanks again for your time. I guess my question is just, as you grew your following and as your work started to be shared more widely, while the internet was simultaneously getting nastier, did you ever find yourself hesitating when writing in a way that you never did before? Or do you push past that now?
No, I think that's why it's been 4 years, as my mother pointed out last night, since I published a book. And I think one of the reasons is that I'm scared to put work out in the world again. People are so fucking mean. Like the people who hate me really hate me. And that's fine, but I'm a delicate flower and it definitely hurts my little feelings. And I'm a people pleaser, so I struggle with it. I'm just like, as I'm writing the book, all I can think is, okay, like the internet's gonna hate this, the internet's gonna hate that, and it's no way to live. It's no way to write. It's the opposite of art. It's the opposite of joy. And so I am trying to shut that part of my brain off to just finish these books, which are almost done, but I've been on the precipice of almost done for like 2 years now because I'm so worried. And I also see it in my smaller essays that I publish in the New York Times and things like that, because no matter what I write, somebody takes like serious and profound issue with it, which is okay. But what's worse is that they misrepresent it when they sort of try to like stunt on Twitter. And that part is very intolerable to me. And I'm working on it in therapy, and that's the truth.
Roxane, the next time you come out with a book, I think you should arm it. We can build a fortress.
There we go.
Because honestly, that is, thank you for saying that, because that's a huge thing. When that book goes out there and it becomes this other thing outside of you, people feel like they have rights. Yeah. They can say whatever they want to say. And I think the writer has to feel protected. I just think you need your people around you to just say, you know what? You're not going to look at that review. You're not going to, just kind of to protect you. So that's my little thing. I just think writers need to be protected because we write that hard stuff, and it's not easy writing it. It just isn't.
No, it really, really isn't. And, tackling race, gender, sexuality, sexual violence, pop culture, these, like, I don't write about things that people feel neutral about. So.
Right. But that's what makes you brave. That's what makes you fearless. I mean, honestly, that's why everybody on this call is here with you, because they want, really how you do this thing. Mm-hmm. And, we applaud that. And, thank God you're brave. Well, and I know bravery has this face that, when you get off screen, and that's when, I get it. But thank you for it. Thank you for putting your words out there. Just thank you for being with us and sharing your space.
Thank you for being so great and having me back. I can't wait to come back. I love Enoch Pratt.
And City Lit, okay.
And City Lit, yes. Goes without saying.
Absolutely. Now, Roxane, can you say a few more things? And then you guys, we're going to give her a big shout out. You can take, after Roxane says what she needs to say, please take yourselves off of mute and just give her some love.
Oh, well, just thank you for having me. The one thing I hear quite a lot is, a lot of writers are like, how do I get to where you're at? And the question is, like, really, how do you get to where you want to be? Like, don't try to model someone else's path, because my path is my path and your path is your path. But people are always like, how do I get an agent? How do I get a publisher? And I always ask, have you written a book? And more than half the time, people have not yet written a book. And so I love ambition. You should know what you want for yourself, and you should sort of be able to map out sort of like where you want to be in 3, 5, 7 years. But you want to make sure that you have the vehicle to get you there. And that starts with having written something. And so I really hope that you all really think about that and focus on writing something, and then trying to make that something good, and then trying to make that something great. Don't overwork the work, and then, get on that journey and take it out into the world. And I'm excited to see what you all come up with.
Thank you so much, Roxane. You have been amazing. Can you guys get off mute and just give her some love?
Thank you.
Love your work. Thank you.
I love your work so much. It inspires me so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care. Good people.
Thank you.
Listen, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Check out citylitproject.org. Tell us what you thought about this program. The more we hear from you, the more we do. And thank you. I love seeing all these beautiful faces. I miss you guys.